Rowan Cole never imagined that being reassigned to Desaria would change his life forever. The space station hung like a forgotten ornament at the edge of the galaxy, its aged metal hull bearing the scars of decades of service. As the transport ship docked with a metallic groan, Rowan gazed through the viewport at his new home, a place notorious for its perpetual smell of burnt coolant and a desolation that everyone tried to avoid. "Welcome to Desaria Station, technician," announced the automated voice as the airlock hissed open. "Current time is 0700 hours. Current population, 43 individuals. 43 souls at the ass end of nowhere." Wonderful. Rowan stepped through the gateway, his standard-issue duffel bag slung over his shoulder. The corridor that greeted him flickered with dying lights, casting uncertain shadows on the grimy floors. A few listless engineers shuffled past, barely acknowledging his presence with tired nods. "You must be Cole," a gravelly voice called out. Station Chief Moritz approached, his substantial belly preceding him by several inches. "Heard about your creative reconfiguration of Commander Hendrick's bathroom gravity controls." Rowan suppressed a smirk. The incident that had earned him this exile wasn't something he regretted, even now. Commander Hendricks had been a tyrant who enjoyed humiliating junior officers, and watching him float helplessly in his shower cubicle, soap bubbles orbiting him like tiny moons, had been worth the disciplinary action. "A regrettable miscalibration, sir," Rowan replied, his face a mask of contrived seriousness. Moritz snorted. "Save it. I need competent hands, not saints. Your quarters are in Section D, and your shift starts at 0900. Try not to rewire any critical systems without permission." "Wouldn't dream of it, Chief." Left to his own devices, Rowan decided to inspect the cargo bay before settling in. The station's layout was simple enough, a central hub with 4 radiating sections like a lopsided cross. The cargo bay occupied much of Section B, a cavernous space filled with storage containers and maintenance equipment. As he entered, the automatic lights flickered to life, illuminating stacks of supplies and dormant machinery. Rowan whistled to himself, the sound echoing through the empty space as he checked inventory against his datapad. He was halfway through the manifest when he felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. He turned slowly, scanning the shadows. Near the large observation window that overlooked the endless starfield stood a figure, so still she might have been a statue. A woman, or at least woman-shaped, her silhouette backlit by the distant stars. "Hello," Rowan called, taking a cautious step forward. "I didn't mean to intrude if this is your thinking spot or something." The figure turned, and Rowan found his breath catching in his throat. She was clearly not human, though humanoid in form. Her skin had a subtle lavender hue that seemed to shimmer under the harsh cargo bay lights. But what immediately drew his attention were her ears, one elegantly pointed upward like those in human myths of elves, while the other curved downward in a gentle arc, markedly different from its pair. Her eyes met his, large, silver-irised, and filled with such wariness that Rowan instinctively raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm Rowan, new technician," he offered with what he hoped was a disarming smile. "Just arrived on that rust bucket they call a transport." She remained silent, studying him with that intense gaze. There was something both vulnerable and dangerous in her posture, like a wounded animal that had learned to fight back. "Not much of a talker, huh?" Rowan shrugged. "That's okay. The last place I worked, everybody talked too much. Mostly orders and reprimands. A little silence is refreshing." He thought he detected the slightest relaxation in her shoulders, but before either could speak again, the cargo bay doors slid open with a hydraulic wheeze. Lieutenant Dax, a lanky man with perpetually narrowed eyes, strode in. He stopped short at the sight of them. "Cole," he barked, "I see you've met our guest." The pause before guest carried unmistakable disdain. The alien woman stepped back, moving deeper into the shadows. "Just making introductions," Rowan replied easily. Dax stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Word of advice, technician. Don't get involved with her. She's not one of us. There's a reason she's here, and it's not for making friends. I wasn't aware friendliness was prohibited on Desaria, Rohan countered, unable to keep the edge from his voice. It's your funeral, Dax muttered before turning to the alien woman. The chief wants the secondary coolant systems checked. Make yourself useful. His tone made it clear she was considered little more than station equipment. Without a word, she moved past them, her movements fluid and precise. As she passed, Rohan, he caught a fleeting scent like rain-washed stone and something unfamiliar but pleasant. What's her name? Rohan asked once she'd gone. They call her Nixa, Dax said. That's all you need to know. Later, lying on the thin mattress in his assigned quarters, Rohan stared at the rust-stained ceiling. The encounter in the cargo bay played in his mind. Nixa, even her name, seemed to carry an air of mystery. Who was she, and why did she seem so alone? What had Dax meant by not one of us? Rohan had never been good at following warnings to stay away from things or people. It was precisely that quality which had landed him on this forgotten outpost in the first place. As sleep finally claimed him, one image remained, silver eyes filled with stars and secrets. The next morning found Rohan elbow-deep in the bowels of a malfunctioning air recycler. 3 hours of diagnostics had yielded nothing, and frustration was setting in. He was about to give up when a shadow fell across his workstation. You're approaching it wrong, came a soft voice. Rohan looked up to find Nixa standing there, her asymmetrical ears catching the overhead light. Up close, he could see fine, almost luminescent patterns on her skin, like subtle constellations. The recycler? He asked, surprised to hear her speak. She nodded once. The problem isn't mechanical. It's the biofiltration matrix. Rohan frowned, then checked the organic components. Sure enough, a colony of the engineered algae had begun to mutate, affecting the oxygen conversion rate. Well, I'll be damned, he murmured. Thanks. I might have been here until next shift. Nixa didn't respond immediately. She seemed to be weighing something in her mind. You're different from the others, she finally said, her voice carrying a musical quality that hadn't been apparent in her first brief statement. I'll take that as a compliment. Rohan grinned, wiping his hands on a rag. Can I buy you a cup of synthetic coffee? As a thank you. The invitation clearly surprised her. Why? Because that's what people do. Share terrible station coffee and complain about work. A subtle change crossed her features. Not quite a smile, but something that softened the wariness in her eyes. I don't drink your coffee. Well, whatever you do drink, then, Rohan persisted. Come on, I owe you one. To his surprise, she nodded once. The observation deck. In 1 hour. When Rohan arrived at the observation deck, a circular room with panoramic windows that offered an unobstructed view of space, Nixa was already there. She stood with her back to the door, gazing out at the stars. I brought options, Rohan announced, balancing a tray with coffee for himself and 3 different station beverages. Wasn't sure what you might like. She turned, and again he was struck by her otherworldly beauty. In the starlight, her skin seemed almost translucent. The blue one, she said, pointing to a viscous liquid that the mess hall synthesizer had labeled as Centaurian nectar. They sat in silence for a while. The vastness of space spread before them. Rohan, never comfortable with quiet for long, eventually broke it. So, those ears, he began, then winced at his lack of tact. I mean, they're interesting. I haven't met many people from your world. Nixa stiffened immediately. I don't wish to discuss my physiology. Sorry, Rohan backpedaled. Foot and mouth disease. It's chronic with me. To his relief, she didn't leave, though the silence that followed was more strained than comfortable. What brought you to Desaria? He tried again. Not exactly a vacation destination. After a long pause, Nixa spoke, her eyes fixed on the stars. Necessity. One-word answers. This was going well. Rohan sighed inwardly, but refused to give up. Yeah, same here. Though in my case, necessity came in the form of an angry commander floating around his bathroom. He thought he detected the slightest twitch at the corner of her mouth. Progress. Throughout the next week, Rohan made it a point to seek Nixa out. He'd bring a beverage to whatever remote corner of the station she was working in or accidentally encounter her during shift changes. Most of their interactions consisted of him talking while she listened, but occasionally she would offer a comment or observation of surprising insight. Meanwhile, rumors about Nixa circulated through the station like recycled air. In the mess hall, Rohan overheard conversations that stopped abruptly when he approached. "They call her kind of aberrant," a maintenance worker was saying. "Cast out because she's defective." "I heard the Allari don't tolerate imperfection," another chimed in. "They'd rather die than live with. You know," he gestured vaguely toward his ears. "Keep your voice down," the first worker hissed. "She's dangerous. Those aberrants have abilities." They fell silent as Rohan sat down nearby, their expressions a mixture of embarrassment and suspicion. That evening, he found Nixa in the observation deck again, her slender form silhouetted against the cosmic backdrop. Without invitation, he took a seat beside her, closer than usual. "Rough day?" he asked, noting the tension in her posture. "Every day here is the same," she replied. "Not for me," Rohan countered. "Today I learned that apparently you're some kind of dangerous outcast with mysterious powers. Care to elaborate?" Nix's head turned sharply toward him, silver eyes widening. For a moment, he thought she might flee, but instead, she looked away again. "Your people talk too much." "That they do," Rohan agreed. "And most of it's nonsense. I'd rather hear the truth from you." The silence stretched between them, filled with the soft hum of the station's life support systems. When Nixa finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Where I come from, imperfection is not tolerated." Rohan waited, sensing she had more to say. "The Allari believe in symmetry, in precise biological order," she continued. "Those born with deviations are considered flawed, dangerous to the genetic purity of our species." "Because of your ears?" Rohan asked, incredulous. Nixa touched one ear self-consciously. "Among other things, physical symmetry is sacred to them. When I was born like this, it was seen as an aberration, a sign of genetic regression. They call us aberrant." "That's insane," Rohan said flatly. "You're exiled because of what? A cosmetic difference?" "It's more than cosmetic to them," she replied. "It represents disorder in what should be perfect." Her voice took on a bitter edge. "The place I grew up never accepted anything less than perfection." The conversation lapsed into silence again, but it felt different now, more intimate, as if a barrier had begun to dissolve between them. "What was your home like?" Nixa asked unexpectedly. Before Desaria, surprised by her interest, Rohan painted a verbal picture of his childhood on a terraformed colony world. The smell of rain on metal rooftops, the bustling night markets with vendors calling out their wares, the makeshift playground where station children raced homemade hover sleds. It wasn't perfect, he concluded, but it was home. As he spoke, Nixa had turned fully toward him, her attention complete, as if storing away every detail. When he finished, the question she asked caught him entirely off guard. "Why do you find me beautiful, human?" Rohan blinked, momentarily speechless. Her tone wasn't flirtatious or coy, but genuinely perplexed, as if she couldn't comprehend the admiration she'd clearly detected in his gaze. What makes you think I do?" he hedged, suddenly feeling exposed. "Your pupils dilate when you look at me. Your respiration changes. These are universal indicators." Rohan let out a surprised laugh. "Well, when you put it like that, how can I deny it?" He sobered, considering her question seriously. "I don't know if I can explain it adequately. Look at you." "I have," she said simply, "and I see what my people see. Asymmetry, imperfection, deviation." The raw honesty in her voice struck something in Rohan. "Then your people need their eyes checked," he said firmly. "Someday, I'll show you that the universe doesn't just see through their narrow lens." Before she could respond, an alarm blared through the station. Red emergency lights bathed the observation deck. "Attention, all personnel," the station's computer announced. "Unidentified vessel approaching. All non-essential staff return to quarters immediately." Nixa stood abruptly, her face a mask of fear. "They found me." "Who?" "The Allari," Rohan asked, but she was already moving toward the exit. "I must go." "Wait." Rohan caught her arm, surprised by the cool smoothness of her skin. "Let me help you." For a moment, she hesitated, searching his face with those extraordinary silver eyes. "You can't fight them, Rohan. No one can." With that, she slipped from his grasp and disappeared through the door, leaving him standing alone as the alarm continued its ominous wail. The next 12 hours were chaos. The approaching vessel had identified itself as an Allari Dominion scout ship, requesting permission to dock for retrieval of contraband biological material. Station Chief Moritz, clearly intimidated by the formal communication, had granted permission despite Rohan's vehement protests. "This isn't about contraband," Rohan argued in the chief's office. "They're after Nixa. She's a refugee, not cargo." Moritz's jowls quivered with indignation. "This station exists at the pleasure of the interstellar community, Cole. The Allari Dominion is a major power with whom we have treaties. I can't risk a diplomatic incident over one individual." "She has rights," Rohan insisted. "You can't just hand her over like property." "Actually, I can," Moritz replied coldly. "Her immigration status is complicated, and I strongly suggest you stay out of this if you want to keep your position here." Ignoring the warning, Rohan spent the next hours searching for Nixa, combing through the station's neglected maintenance tunnels and storage bays. He finally found her in an auxiliary control room that had been decommissioned years ago, huddled between defunct servers. "Nixa," he whispered, and she spun toward him, a makeshift weapon in her hand. Her eyes widened in recognition, and she lowered the sharpened metal rod. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice strained. "They'll be docking soon." "I know. That's why we need to move. Moritz won't protect you." Nixa's laugh was hollow. "No one ever has." "I will," Rohan stated simply. "But first, I need to understand what we're dealing with. Who exactly are they, and what do they want with you?" She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "The Allari practice genetic purification. Those born with significant deviations are typically eliminated at birth. I was spared that fate because my mother concealed my condition. When I was discovered as an adolescent, I should have been sterilized and relegated to a labor colony." "Jesus," Rohan breathed. "I escaped," Nixa continued, "which makes me not just a Barent, but a fugitive. The penalty for that is reclamation. My body will be broken down to its base components and recycled." Rohan felt sick. "That's not happening. Not while I'm breathing." "You don't understand," she insisted. "The Allari who hunt aberrants are relentless. They believe it's their sacred duty to preserve the purity of life. You can't stop them." "Watch me," Rohan said grimly. "Come on, we need to keep moving." "I have a plan." "Well, half a plan. Maybe a quarter." As they navigated through the station's service corridors, the announcement came that the Allari vessel had docked. Nixa grew increasingly tense, her eyes darting to every shadow. "They're sending hunters," she whispered. "I can sense them already." "How many?" "3, maybe 4. They don't need many. They're augmented. Great. Superpowered space eugenicists." This was getting better by the minute. Rohan led her to a maintenance closet near the docking bay, pulling her inside the cramped space. He quickly accessed the control panel hidden behind a ventilation grill. "What are you doing?" Nixa asked. "Creating a diversion," Rohan replied, fingers flying over the controls. "These old cleaning bots are due for a malfunction, I think." Within minutes, a fleet of antiquated maintenance robots began whirring to life throughout the station. Their programming scrambled to create maximum chaos. Alarms blared as the bots sprayed cleaning solution randomly, bumped into walls, and generally caused mayhem. "That should keep everyone busy for a while," Rohan grinned. "Now for Phase 2. Phase 2 involved sneaking into the docking bay while the station's crew was distracted. The Allari ship gleamed like polished obsidian against the station's dull metal, its design sleek and predatory. "We need to disable their tracking systems," Nixa said, eyeing the vessel. "Otherwise, they'll follow us anywhere we go." "Us?" Rohan raised an eyebrow. "But you're on board with escaping together?" For the first time, Nixa almost smiled. Rumble, supposedly preparing to open, though Rohan had merely triggered the warning system, not the actual mechanism. In the ensuing confusion, Nixa darted toward the maintenance craft. Two of the hunters immediately pivoted toward her, moving with inhuman speed. Rohan, seeing she wouldn't make it alone, grabbed a plasma cutter from a nearby workbench and hurled it at the nearest hunter. The device struck true, exploding in a shower of sparks that momentarily blinded the Allari. In that instant, Rohan sprinted to Nix's side, helping her into the craft before scrambling in after her. "Go, go, go," he urged as Nix's fingers flew over the controls. The small craft sputtered to life, lifting shakily from the deck just as the hunters recovered. One leaped, almost reaching them, but Rohan slammed the hatch shut on the creature's reaching arm. There was a sickening crunch, followed by a spurt of silvery fluid that might have been blood. The maintenance craft shot out of the bay, careening wildly before Nixa stabilized it. Behind them, the Allari ship was already powering up. "Section D," Rohan reminded her, clinging to his seat as she executed a maneuver that felt like it inverted his stomach. The auxiliary hangar. Nixa piloted the small craft around the exterior of the station with surprising skill, dodging antennae and support struts. The Allari ship emerged from the main docking bay, its engines glowing ominously as it prepared to pursue. They reached the auxiliary hangar just as the station's security protocols kicked in, sealing all external access in response to the unauthorized launch. Nixa managed to slip through the narrowing gap moments before the heavy doors closed completely. Inside, the rusty Sparrow waited, a battered supply runner that had seen better decades. Its hull was patched in places, and its systems were outdated, but it had a functioning hyperdrive and life support. Right now, that was all that mattered. They abandoned the maintenance craft and raced to the larger ship. Rohan's technician credentials granted them access, and they hurried aboard. The interior was musty and cramped, clearly designed for function over comfort. "Can you get this thing running?" Nixa asked as they reached the cockpit. "Watch me," Rohan replied, dropping into the pilot's seat. His specialty might have been station systems rather than ship operations, but he'd logged enough simulator hours to manage the basics. "It won't be pretty, but it'll fly." As he initiated the startup sequence, the hangar doors began to cycle open. Someone was overriding the lockdown. "They're coming," Nixa warned, strapping herself into the co-pilot's seat. The Sparrow's engines whined in protest, struggling to reach operational capacity after months of disuse. Outside, they could see the Allari ship approaching the hangar, its weapons systems visibly charging. "Come on, you piece of junk," Rohan muttered, coaxing the reluctant systems to life. With a shudder that ran through the entire frame, the old ship finally lifted off the deck. They shot out of the hangar, just as the first energy blast from the Allari vessel seared the space they'd occupied seconds before. The Sparrow groaned under the strain as Rohan pushed its outdated engines to their limit, putting as much distance as possible between them and the station. "They're locking weapons again," Nixa reported, her fingers dancing over the sensor displays. Rohan initiated a series of evasive maneuvers that the ship protested with alarming creaks and shudders. "This rust bucket isn't built for combat. We need to make the jump to hyperspace." "The Navcom needs coordinates," Nixa pointed out. "I'm open to suggestions." Nixa hesitated only briefly before entering a string of numbers. "These will take us to a trading outpost in the Vega Drift. It's not entirely legal, but the Allari avoid it. Criminals and outcasts it is," Rohan grinned, punching in the activation sequence. The hyperdrive engaged with a teeth-rattling vibration that suggested critical components were barely holding together. Stars elongated into streaks of light, and then they were gone, leaving the Allari ship and Desaria station far behind. In the sudden silence of hyperspace, Rohan let out a long breath and turned to Nixa. "Well, that was exciting. I think I may have shortened my lifespan by a decade." For the first time, Nixa laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes that transformed her face completely. "You're insane, human." "Rohan," he corrected with a smile. "If we're going to be fugitives together, you should probably use my name." "Rohan," she repeated softly, and somehow the way she said it made it sound new and meaningful. They spent the next hours taking inventory of their meager resources. The Sparrow had basic supplies, emergency rations, water reclamation, and minimal medical equipment. It wasn't much, but it would keep them alive until they reached the outpost. During a lull-in activity, they found themselves in the ship's tiny observation nook, little more than a porthole with a bench seat. The swirling patterns of hyperspace cast strange, shifting lights across their faces. "You risked everything," Nixa said quietly. "Your position, your safety." "What?" Rohan considered the question. "I don't think I could have lived with myself if I'd stood by and let them take you. What they planned to do, it's beyond cruel. It's evil." "Many would say they were simply maintaining the natural order," she countered, though without conviction. "There's nothing natural about genetic purification," Rohan said firmly. "Besides, I'm a bit of a specialist in messing up natural orders. Just ask Commander Hendricks." That earned him another small laugh, which he counted as a victory. As the hours stretched into days, they fell into a routine. Rohan handled the ship's temperamental systems, constantly coaxing more efficiency from engines that protested every demand. Nixa proved to have an intuitive understanding of navigation that borderlined on the supernatural, guiding them through hyperspace lanes that weren't on any standard charts. During their downtime, they shared stories. Rohan spoke of his family, scattered across 3 colonies, and his checkered career history. Nixa gradually revealed more about Alari society, describing cities of perfect geometric symmetry where even plant life was genetically modified to grow in precisely balanced patterns. "It sounds beautiful, but sterile," Rohan observed. "It is both," Nixa agreed. "Beauty without variation becomes empty." On the 3rd day of their journey, disaster struck. A power fluctuation caused the hyperdrive to disengage prematurely, dropping them into normal space while short of their destination. Worse, the strain had damaged the drive coils beyond Rohan's ability to repair. "We're stranded," he admitted after hours of futile tinkering. "The sublight engines still work, but at this distance." "We'd reached the outpost in approximately 47 years. Nixa finished for him, her expression grim. Scanning their surroundings, they discovered they weren't entirely without options. A small mining colony existed on an asteroid just a few hours away at sublight speed. It wasn't ideal. Such places were often lawless and dangerous, but it represented their only chance of acquiring parts to repair the hyperdrive. As they approached the asteroid, the colony came into view, a haphazard collection of domes and tunnels carved into the rocky surface. Ships of various designs and states of repair clustered around makeshift docking areas. "Looks charming," Rohan remarked dryly. "Keep your guard up. These frontier outposts can be unpredictable." They managed to dock without incident, securing the Sparrow with what little security the aging ship offered. The docking fee took nearly half their meager credits, leaving precious little for the parts they needed. The colony itself was as chaotic as its exterior suggested. A maze of narrow corridors filled with a diverse mix of species, most engaged in business best conducted away from official eyes. The air was thick with a competing sense of exotic foods, mechanical lubricants, and too many bodies in insufficient ventilation. Nixa drew stares, her distinctive appearance marking her as unusual even in this melting pot of cultures. She pulled a hood over her asymmetrical ears, but couldn't disguise the subtle shimmer of her skin or the penetrating silver of her eyes. "Stay close," Rohan murmured as they navigated the crowded market area, searching for a parts dealer. They found one eventually, a 6-limbed being with compound eyes who examined their damaged drive coil with obvious skepticism. "This relic?" the dealer chittered. "Impossible to match exactly. Might have compatible parts, but expensive." The price he named was far beyond their remaining funds. Negotiations proved fruitless. The dealer knew they had no alternatives and held firm. "We need those parts," Nixa said as they retreated to a dingy cantina to regroup. "Without them, we're trapped." Rohan stared into his dubious-looking drink. "There's one option. I could try to win the credits we need." He nodded toward a crowded area where various games of chance were in progress. "I used to be pretty good at Stellar Draw. It's partly skill, not just luck. And if you lose what little we have," Nixa asked, "then we'll be in exactly the same position Just more quickly, Rohan admitted with a half-smile. Got any better ideas? She didn't, and so they found themselves at a stellar draw table, with Rohan betting their dwindling resources on a game that involved predicting stellar formations from random seed patterns. To Nyx's amazement, he actually seemed to have a talent for it, his technical knowledge of star systems giving him an edge over the other players. Their fortunes rose, then fell, then rose again. They were tantalizingly close to their goal when commotion erupted at the entrance to the gambling den. 3 figures entered, moving with that distinctive, synchronized precision that needed no introduction. Hunters, Nyxa hissed, shrinking back. How do they find us? Rohan wondered, abandoning their winnings to pull Nyxa toward a rear exit. The hyperdrive malfunction must have left a trace signature they could track, she theorized as they fled through back corridors. They emerged into a maintenance tunnel, the sounds of pursuit not far behind. The asteroid colony was a warren of such passages, offering temporary sanctuary but no real escape. Eventually, they found themselves in a storage area filled with mining equipment. We need weapons, Rohan said, scanning the tools around them. Nyxa surprised him by reaching for a power distributor, quickly reconfiguring its components. This will create an energy pulse that should disrupt their neural enhancements, she explained. Temporarily, at least. Where did you learn to do that? Rohan asked, impressed. Survival, she replied simply. Armed with Nyx's improvised weapon and a mining laser Rohan had appropriated, they prepared to make their stand. The hunters were thorough, methodically checking each area as they closed in. When the first one appeared in the doorway, Nyxa activated her device. A wave of energy pulsed outward, causing the hunter to stagger and convulse. Rohan followed with a mining laser, not aiming to kill, but to incapacitate, severing the neural implants visible at the base of the hunter's neck. The strategy worked for the first hunter, but the others adapted quickly. The second one dodged Nyx's pulse, moving with blurring speed toward her. Rohan intercepted it, grappling desperately with a being far stronger than himself. He managed to land a lucky strike with the laser, damaging the hunter's leg, but took a punishing blow to his ribs in return. Nyxa, meanwhile, was using her smaller size and agility to her advantage, keeping the third hunter at bay while recalibrating her device for another pulse. When it discharged, both remaining hunters were caught in its field, momentarily paralyzed. Now, Nyxa shouted, and they ran, leaving the temporarily disabled hunters behind. They reached the docking bay, both breathing hard and Rohan clutching his injured side. The Sparrow waited, their only means of escape, but without the repaired hyperdrive, they wouldn't get far. I failed you, Rohan gasped as they stumbled aboard. We can't outrun them without the hyperdrive. Nyx's expression was determined rather than defeated. We don't need to outrun them. We just need to outsmart them. She moved to the navigation console. There's an asteroid mining field 2 hours from here. The magnetic properties of those particular asteroids create sensor distortions. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them temporarily. And then what? Rohan asked, wincing as he eased into the pilot's seat. Then we improvise, she replied with unexpected conviction. Isn't that what you do best? And cut power. What are you doing? Nyxa asked, alarmed. Playing dead, Rohan explained, quickly shutting down non-essential systems. If we're lucky, their sensors won't distinguish us from the asteroid in this magnetic soup. If we're very lucky, they'll think we've been destroyed. Minutes stretched into hours as they drifted, embedded in the crevasse. Minimal life support their only active system. Outside, the Allari ship patrolled methodically, scanning for traces of their quarry. In the dim emergency lighting, Rohan turned to Nyxa. While we're hiding, mind if I ask you something? She nodded cautiously. You could have escaped alone in that maintenance craft. Probably would have had better odds without dragging along a damaged human. Why let me come with you? Nyxa was silent for so long that Rohan thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. When I fled my home world, I learned that solitude is its own kind of prison. For years, I've existed rather than lived, always running, never connecting. Her silver eyes met his in the darkness. You spoke to me as a person, not an aberration. You saw me. Hard not to, Rohan replied gently. You're kind of impossible to miss. Why do you find me beautiful? Human? She asked again, the question that had haunted their interactions. This time, Rohan didn't evade. Because you are. Not despite your differences, but because of them. Your asymmetry makes you unique, real. The Alari's idea of perfect symmetry sounds like a nightmare to me. Sterile, predictable, lifeless. He reached out tentatively, brushing his fingers against her unique, downward curving ear. She didn't pull away. This, he continued, is beautiful because it's you. Because it represents strength, surviving in a world designed to reject you. Nyx's eyes widened at his touch, but there was wonder rather than fear in them now. Slowly, she raised her own hand to his face, tracing a small scar on his jawline. You are also asymmetrical, she observed. Rohan laughed softly. Most humans are in small ways. We're a mess of imperfections. Perhaps that's why your species has survived, Nyx mused. Adaptation requires variation. Exactly. Perfection is stagnation. The moment stretched between them, intimate and fragile. Then the ship's proximity alarm shattered it. The Alari vessel was approaching their hiding place. They held their breath as the hunter ship passed directly overhead, its sensors sweeping the asteroid. For an agonizing minute, it seemed certain they would be discovered. Then, to their amazement, the vessel continued on, evidently satisfied that its quarry had either been destroyed or escaped beyond the asteroid field. I can't believe that worked, Rohan exhaled, powering the systems back online. What now? Nyxa asked. We still need parts for the hyperdrive. Rohan studied the scanner. There's a mining operation on one of the larger asteroids in this field. Not as big as the colony we left, but they might have what we need. And with any luck, the hunters won't expect us to head deeper into the field rather than out of it. The mining operation turned out to be little more than an automated extraction facility with a small maintenance crew. The 3 engineers stationed there were initially suspicious of the battered ship that limped to their dock, but Rohan's technical knowledge and offer to trade labor for parts eventually won them over. While Nyxa remained aboard the Sparrow, keeping watch for any sign of pursuit, Rohan worked alongside the miners to earn the components they needed. The labor was grueling, especially with his injured ribs, but after 2 days, he had enough parts to attempt repairs on the hyperdrive. It's not a perfect match, he admitted as he installed the jury-rig components, but it should get us to the Vega Drift. After that, we'll need proper repairs. I drag you into this, Nyxa said, watching him work. Your life is ruined because of me. Rohan paused, meeting her gaze. My life on Desaria was hardly worth preserving. Assistant shift manager on a forgotten station? Trust me, this is an upgrade. He gestured around the decrepit ship. Rusty walls, constant danger, terrible food, but the company's better. That earned him a small smile, a sight he was coming to treasure. The repaired hyperdrive functioned, though with concerning vibrations that suggested it wouldn't last long. They bid farewell to the miners and plotted a course for the Vega Drift, hoping the Alari hunters had given up or lost their trail. The journey passed uneventfully, allowing them time to rest and plan. Rohan's ribs began to heal, and Nyxa seemed to grow more comfortable in his presence, her initial wariness gradually replaced by something approaching trust. On the final night before reaching the Vega Drift, they sat together in the observation nook, sharing the last of a strange but pleasant fermented beverage one of the miners had given them. What will you do when we reach the outpost? Rohan asked. Nyxa contemplated the swirling patterns of hyperspace. Continue running, I suppose. It's all I've known for years. Sounds lonely. It is. She turned to him, her expression uncertain. What will you do? Rohan hadn't allowed himself to think that far ahead. I'm not sure. Can't exactly go back to the Coalition territories now. I'm probably listed as a fugitive myself for stealing the Sparrow and interfering with the Alari. He took a sip of his drink, feeling its warmth spread through him. I could keep running with you, if you wanted the company. 2 fugitives against the galaxy has a certain romantic appeal, doesn't it? I pulled you into this chaos, Nyxa said, guilt clouding her features. You should find a way back to your life. What life? Rohan countered. I was just existing too, Nixa. Following orders, fixing things that would break again, counting days until, what? Retirement? Death. He shook his head. At least this feels real. I've been more alive in these past days than in years. Her hand found his in the dim light, cool fingers intertwining with his warmer ones. You would continue to risk yourself for me. In a heartbeat. The Vega drift materialized before them as they dropped out of hyperspace. A sprawling collection of derelict ships, abandoned stations, and makeshift habitats all linked together into a massive, ever-shifting structure. Home to smugglers, refugees, and those who preferred to live beyond the reach of galactic powers, it represented both sanctuary and danger. They docked at an outer hub, paying for repairs with the last of their credits. While mechanics worked on the Sparrow, they ventured into the drift to acquire supplies and information. The outpost was a riot of sensory input. Crowded corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy, markets selling everything from rare spices to forbidden technology, the air thick with unfamiliar scents and sounds. Nixa drew less attention here than at the mining colony. The drift's population was diverse enough that her appearance hardly registered as unusual. In a dimly lit information broker's den, they learned troubling news. The Allari Dominion had issued a bounty for both of them. Nixa as an escaped genetic deviant, and Rohan as her accomplice in crimes against biological purity. They're not giving up, Rohan observed grimly as they left the broker's establishment. They never do, Nixa replied. The Allari believe they have a sacred duty to eliminate aberrations from the universe. It's not just law to them, it's religion. Then we need a permanent solution, not just another temporary hiding place. They found a quiet corner in a multi-species cafeteria to discuss options. Over bowls of something that claimed to be soup, Rohan outlined a bold plan. What if we expose them? The Coalition has laws against genetic discrimination. Most civilized worlds would be horrified by their practices. Nix's silver eyes clouded with doubt. The Allari are powerful, wealthy. Their world supplies rare elements crucial to hyperspace technology. Many would look the other way. Not if we make it impossible to ignore, Rohan insisted. We need evidence, documentation of their practices, testimony from other survivors if there are any. There are others, Nixa admitted. Scattered, hiding. Finding them would be difficult and dangerous. But not impossible. She considered this. There were rumors of a sanctuary, a hidden colony of aberrants who escaped. I never found it myself, but their planning was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance. 3 drift security officers were questioning patrons, showing images on their data devices. Even from a distance, Rohan could make out his own face and Nix's distinctive profile. Time to go, he muttered, guiding her toward a service exit. They slipped through the labyrinthine corridors of the drift, using maintenance passages to avoid security checkpoints. The Sparrow's repairs weren't complete, but they had no choice but to leave immediately. As they approached their docking bay, Nixa suddenly pulled Rohan into a shadowy alcove. Moments later, 2 Allari hunters strode past, their synchronized movements unmistakable even in civilian clothing. They're waiting for us at the ship, Nixa whispered once the hunters had passed. Then we need another way out, Rohan replied, thinking quickly. The drift has hundreds of ships coming and going. We just need to find one that's leaving soon. After bribing a dock worker with Rohan's chronometer, his last possession of value, they learned of a cargo hauler departing for the outer reach within the hour. The captain, a grizzled Centaurian with more mechanical parts than organic ones, agreed to take them on as temporary crew in exchange for Rohan's technical expertise. What about the Sparrow? Nixa asked as they hurriedly boarded. The hauler. Rohan gave the ship a silent farewell. She served her purpose. Maybe she'll lead the hunters on a wild chase when they realize we've abandoned her. The cargo hauler, ironically named Second Chance, pulled away from the Vega drift as alarms began to sound throughout the structure. The Allari had discovered their quarry was attempting escape, but too late to prevent it. Over the following weeks, Rohan and Nixa worked their passage on the Second Chance, gradually earning the trust of its small, eclectic crew. The captain, once satisfied they weren't bringing more trouble than they were worth, revealed that a ship regularly transported goods to remote colonies beyond mainstream commerce routes, including some that didn't officially exist. This aberrant sanctuary, he growled when Nixa carefully broached the subject. Heard whispers. Never confirmed it myself. His mechanical I whirred as it focused on her. But I know someone who might have coordinates. For the right price. That someone turned out to be a data merchant on a frozen moon 3 systems away from their current position. By the time they reached it, Rohan had made himself indispensable enough to the ship's operations that the captain agreed to a brief detour. The data merchant, a being of indeterminate species encased in a life support pod, drove a hard bargain, requiring not credits, but a specific service. The retrieval of a data core from an abandoned research station in a nearby asteroid belt. Simple exchange. The merchant's mechanical voice rasped. You bring core, I give coordinates. No core, no deal. The mission proved far from simple. The research station was abandoned for good reason. A containment failure had released an experimental pathogen that had crystallized the unfortunate researchers. Their bodies remained, frozen in their final moments like macabre statues. Navigating the hazardous environment required all of Rohan's technical ingenuity and Nix's unique abilities. Abilities she had kept hidden until necessity revealed them. To Rohan's amazement, she demonstrated an uncanny sensitivity to energy patterns, able to detect the crystallizing pathogen before it became visible. Another aberration the Allari feared. She explained reluctantly when he questioned her after they'd secured the data core and returned to their ship. Some of us develop capabilities beyond normal Allari perception. They call it evolutionary regression, but it's really the opposite. Adaptation, evolution in process. They fear what they don't understand, Rohan observed, and what they can't control. The data merchant kept their word. In exchange for the core, they provided coordinates to a star system designated only as Haven in their records. Captain Kraz agreed to drop them within shuttle range of the coordinates. Got contracts to keep, he explained gruffly. But I respect anyone the Allari want dead on principle. As they prepared to depart in the ship's shuttle, the captain surprised them with supplies and a modified transponder that would help mask their signature. Found family where you can, he advised, his organic eye holding something like concern. Universe is too cold for lone travelers. The journey to Haven took 3 days in the small shuttle. As they approached the coordinates, they found not a planet as expected, but an unremarkable asteroid belt circling a red dwarf star. There's nothing here, Rohan said, disappointment heavy in his voice. No, Nixa countered, studying the scanner with intensity. It's here, but hidden. She adjusted the sensors, focusing on patterns that seemed random to Rohan's eye, but clearly meant something to her. After several minutes of calibration, a signal appeared, faint, encrypted, but definitely artificial. Following it led them through the asteroid field to what appeared to be a large, unremarkable rock. As they approached, however, a narrow fissure became visible, just wide enough for their shuttle to pass through. Inside was a marvel, a hollowed asteroid containing a self-contained colony. Artificial gravity, atmosphere generators, hydroponic gardens, and living quarters had all been constructed within the massive rock. External sensors and holographic projectors made it appear like nothing more than another piece of space debris to casual observation. They were met by a reception committee as their shuttle docked, a diverse group of Allari, all bearing what their society would term aberrations. Some had asymmetrical features like Nixa, others displayed more dramatic variations, unusual skin patterns, extra digits, even one with a third eye-like organ in the center of their forehead. Welcome to Haven, greeted their apparent leader, an older Allari whose left arm was notably smaller than his right. I am Trin. You are unexpected visitors. Nixa stepped forward. I am Nixa, designated aberrant from Central Colony. This is Rohan Cole, formerly of Desarius Station. Trin's eyes widened slightly at Rohan. A human? Interesting company for one of our kind. He saved my life, Nixus said simply. multiple times. The Allari Dominion hunts us both now. This revelation caused a stir among the greeting party. Humans rarely became involved in Allari affairs, and becoming a target of the Dominion was virtually unheard of. Then you have much to tell us, Turin replied, gesturing for them to follow. Haven proved to be home to nearly 300 aberrants who had escaped Allari purification over decades. They had built a functioning society within their hidden world, developing technologies that utilize their unique abilities rather than suppressing them. In the communal dining hall that evening, Rohan and Nixa shared their story with the colony's leadership council. When they described their idea of exposing the Allari's practices to the wider galaxy, they received mixed responses. "We have tried this before," said an elder member, her skin patterned with luminescent whorls. Evidence was discredited, witnesses silenced. The Dominion's economic power shields them from consequences, added another. But things are changing in the coalition, Rohan argued. New laws protecting genetic diversity, growing movements against discrimination. The timing could be right. Discussions continued late into the night. By its end, a tentative plan had formed. They would gather testimony from Haven's residents, compile documentation of Allari atrocities, and present it to sympathetic members of the Coalition Council. It will be dangerous, Turin warned. The Dominion has agents throughout Coalition space. Staying hidden forever isn't a solution, Nixa countered, with a conviction that surprised even Rohan. More children are born aberrant every cycle. More being destroyed or exiled. It has to stop. The colony assigned them quarters together, a small but comfortable space with a viewport overlooking the internal garden. As they settled in for the night, Rohan noticed Nixa seemed troubled despite their warm welcome. "What's wrong?" he asked. She turned to him, silver eyes reflecting the soft lighting. "I've spent my life running from what I am. Here, surrounded by others like me, I should feel at home, but I don't know if I belong anywhere anymore." Rohan moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Maybe belonging isn't about a place. Maybe it's about who you're with." "Why do you find me beautiful, human?" she asked again, but this time, the question held different meaning, not doubt but wonder. Instead of answering with words, Rohan leaned forward, pressing his lips gently to hers. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Nixa responded, her arms encircling him. When they finally parted, Rohan smiled. "Does that answer your question?" Over the following days, they integrated into Haven's community while planning their mission. Rohan's technical skills proved valuable to the colony's maintenance crew, while Nixa discovered others who shared her energy-sensing abilities and began training to refine her talent. Their plan evolved into something more comprehensive than initially envisioned. Haven had been collecting evidence for years, recorded testimonies, smuggled medical records, even DNA samples proving the deliberate genetic manipulation the Allari performed to enforce their standards of purity. "We need to present this to multiple authorities simultaneously," Rohan suggested during a strategy session. "The Coalition Council, yes, but also the Interspecies Rights Tribunal and the Galactic Media Network. Make it impossible to suppress. We would need operatives in all those locations," Turin pointed out. "The moment we move against the Dominion, they will respond with everything they have." "Then we prepare for that," Nixa said. "We know their tactics, their technology. We've been evading them our entire lives." As preparations intensified, so did Rohan and Nix's relationship. What had begun as an unlikely alliance had blossomed into something neither had expected to find, a deep connection that transcended their different origins. Then came the day they'd been dreading. Haven's perimeter sensors detected an Allari hunter ship passing through the system. Though it showed no signs of having detected the colony, its presence was alarming. "They're expanding their search pattern," Turin concluded grimly. "It's only a matter of time before they find us." The discovery accelerated their timeline. They would have to act before Haven's location was compromised. 3 teams were formed. One would approach the Coalition Council, another the Rights Tribunal, and the third, led by Rohan and Nixa, would deliver their evidence to the Galactic Media Network's central hub. The night before they were to depart, Rohan found Nixa at one of Haven's observation points. gazing out at the star field visible through a reinforced viewport. Nervous? He asked, joining her. Terrified, she admitted, but also ready. For the first time, I'm not just running away from something. I'm running towards something. Rohan took her hand. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know I've never regretted a single moment since I met you. Even when we were being shot at. Nixa smiled, the expression now coming more naturally to her. You humans have strange definitions of happiness. One of our many charming qualities. Their shuttle departed Haven the next morning, equipped with a powerful encryption package containing all their evidence. 2 other shuttles left simultaneously, heading for different destinations. If even one succeeded, the Alari's secrets would be exposed. Their journey to the media hub stationed near the Coalition capital proceeded smoothly, too smoothly, Rohan thought. Either they had truly evaded detection, or they were being allowed to proceed into a trap. His suspicions proved correct. As they approached the massive communication station that housed the Galactic Media Network, 3 Alari vessels decloaked around them, their weapons systems active. They knew we were coming, Nixa said, her voice steady despite the danger. But they don't know exactly what we're carrying, Rohan pointed out. He activated a hidden program in their shuttle's communications array. Time for Plan B. Before the Alari could lock tractor beams on their shuttle, the program executed, broadcasting their encrypted data package on all emergency frequencies. Simultaneously, it activated a subroutine in the media hub's public access systems, forcing screens throughout the station to display portions of their evidence. Images of Alari purification centers, testimony from survivors, medical records of genetic corrections. The Alari ships opened fire, but it was too late. The data was propagating across the network, impossible to contain. Their shuttle took heavy damage, systems failing as Rohan struggled to maintain control. We need to dock, he shouted over the alarms. We'll never make it, Nixa replied, watching the Alari ships moving to cut them off from the station. In that moment, space around them rippled as a new vessel dropped out of hyperspace. A Coalition peacekeeping cruiser, responding to their emergency broadcast. It positioned itself between the shuttle and the Alari ships. Attention, Alari vessels, came the transmission. This is Captain Lan of the Coalition Peacekeeping Force. Stand down immediately. The Alari commander's response was cold. This is an internal Dominion matter. These fugitives have stolen classified information. Information about genetic purification programs that violate Coalition law, Captain Lan countered. We've received similar broadcasts from 2 other locations. Your secrets are out, Commander. For a tense moment, it seemed the Alari might attack despite being outgunned. Then, with evident reluctance, they powered down their weapons systems. The Coalition cruiser extended docking assistance to the damaged shuttle. Once aboard, Rohan and Nixa learned that all 3 teams had succeeded. Their evidence was being examined by authorities throughout Coalition space, and the initial response was one of shock and outrage. The Dominion is already issuing denials, Captain Lan informed them, but the evidence is overwhelming. The Coalition Council has called an emergency session. In the days that followed, the full extent of the Alari's practices came to light. Public opinion turned strongly against them, with protests occurring outside Dominion embassies on multiple worlds. The Interspecies Rights Tribunal announced formal investigations, and trade sanctions were being prepared. Most importantly for Nixa and the other aberrants, the Coalition issued a special protection order, declaring them a persecuted group entitled to asylum and prohibiting their extradition to Alari space. 1 month after their desperate flight from the Hunters, Rohan and Nixa stood on an observation deck of the Coalition headquarters, watching as representatives voted overwhelmingly to condemn the Alari Dominion's genetic policies. It doesn't feel real, Nixa said softly. All my life running, hiding, ashamed of what I was. And now? Rohan asked. She turned to him, the asymmetry of her features catching the light in a way that still took his breath away. Now I understand that what they called a flaw was actually a gift. My aberrations gave me abilities they feared, perspectives they couldn't imagine. So what's next for you? For us? Rohan asked, the question that had been on his mind as the immediate crisis resolved. Nixa took his hand. Haven needs representatives here, voices to ensure the coalition keeps its promises. And there are still aberrants in hiding who don't know they're free to come out of the shadows. Sounds like important work. It will be dangerous for a while, she warned. The Dominion won't change overnight. There will be resistance, perhaps violence. Rohan smiled. Good thing you've got a human who specializes in getting into and out of trouble, then. As they looked out at the stars, Nixa asked one final time, "Why do you find me beautiful, human?" Rohan turned to face her fully. "Because you're brave enough to be exactly who you are in a universe that tried to make you something else. Because you fought for justice when you could have just hidden away. Because your differences aren't flaws. They're what make you uniquely, perfectly Nixa." He brushed his fingers gently across her downward curving ear. "And because when I look at you, I see someone who makes me want to be better, braver, more than I ever thought I could be." Nix's smile was radiant. "Then I think, Rohan Cole, that we have found where we belong." Hand in hand, they turned from the viewport to face whatever challenges the future might bring, no longer running from the past, but moving together toward possibility. Two imperfect beings who had found perfect acceptance in each other's eyes.